Okay, just to record this session, obviously, so that you know that the recording is on. What we are looking at doing is basically doing an overview of the unit, which is, are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, brilliant. And you can hear me as well. So just to start now, today what we're looking at doing is covering, the Unit 4, which is Contemporary Issues in Human Resource Management. And as you can see on my screen, you'll be able to see two things. You'll be able to see a presentation on the left, and then obviously see the unit specification, which is this document. Now, the main purpose of today's session is to basically give you an overview of, the contemporary issues in HRM unit. And the idea would be, after I give you a bit of an overview, I would kind of send you a small handout to read so that you can, reinforce and crystallize the theory that I will take you through in the presentation. Okay? This particular unit obviously carries 15 credits, and at the master's level, it's got about 4 learning outcomes, as you can see here. These are the 4 learning outcomes that we're looking at covering. I'm going to slightly try and make this a bit bigger so that you're able to see clearly. And then we'll keep switching. So what we are looking at doing today is basically in this particular unit, learning outcome 1 is what I will try and cover, which is this particular outcome. So understand how contemporary issues in HR impact the organization, efficiency. Now, one of the key things that we look at today is when you look at resources, human resource is one of the vital resource now considered, is one of the vital resources considered by organizations. If you have good people working for you in the company, what you will find is that it will be easier for the company to achieve its aims and objectives and, goals set by the management for the year. So there are at times when you look at managing human resources, there are issues which come up, and some of these issues are called contemporary issues. Now, the word definition is itself, when I look at just pulling out the definition of the word contemporary in terms of the meaning of the word, it's basically talks about things like occurring at the same time, or belonging to, or occurring in the present. Now, contemporary of HR basically means there are certain issues which are defined as not ordinary issues, or these are issues which you will face as an HR manager from time to time when you manage human resources. So you'll have to be prepared to understand what are these issues and how these issues actually affect human resource or human resources that you manage within the organization. So very briefly, when I look at some of the contemporary issues, about HR managers actually face a myriad, basically, variety of challenges today in managing a workforce. Let's look at the example of Facebook. Facebook as an example, if you look at, there are different types of, people working within the organization, and some of them come from different geographies. So there is different culture, there is different background in terms of people coming into work within the organization, and the HR has to basically look at making all of them work together. Basically highlighted in the point which is called diverse workforce. That means, there are people from India, China, Africa, different backgrounds, diverse backgrounds. Also, when you look at a company like Facebook, you will typically find that because they operate in different geographies or different countries, they also are affected by legislation. Now, legislation in this case is labor force legislation. So Facebook in the UK has to comply with labor laws in the UK. Things like, you're allowed to work only 40 hours a week, maximum of 40 hours a week. Worker to be able to paid holidays and national holidays and things like that. So these are all part of labor legislation which the organization has to kind of work and conform within a particular geography. So the role of the HR manager is looking at managing this diverse workforce, understanding the boundaries of legislation or law which they have to comply with in order to make sure that they are able to provide all the relevant benefits and all the relevant things as per the particular rules and regulations within a country. Issues which HR managers work with within a diverse workforce environment and also comply with legislation of a particular country, and these then affect the working of its workers within that geography, right? Now, you look at maybe a legislation which basically brings in a piece of work like that the minimum wage pay cannot be less than 720 an hour, right? So HR manager has to grapple with the fact that the wages in a particular country for a worker working 40 hours will have to be this much minimum per week because you cannot pay anything less than that because it is a law.
Right.
Now, some of these issues that HR managers work with are basically issues which are regular issues. That means somebody who gets into the role of being a human resources manager will need to understand what is diversity of workforce, how to comply and work with legislation and rules within a particular country or geography, and other things like managing resources, appraisals. So these are normal issues. Now, what are contemporary issues? Contemporary issues are things like when you look at somebody working within the HR department, working within the company, has chronic health issues. You know, they have issues which are related to training, issues which are, say, for example, related to benefits and compensation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, issues which are related to, say, discrimination or sexual orientation, these are classified as contemporary issues that we look at within the company, and that is what the HR managers have to look at when we look at some of the contemporary issues that we understand. Now, just looking at a slightly separate slide before I get into this one, if you look at this, contemporary issues are basically affected by or dealt by the HR within a department, within a company. So you have the human resources department, and the issues, some of them can arise because they are external, and some of them can be internal. So internal is issues which arise from within the company and working within the company. External are issues which are affecting the workforce within an organization. So when I give you an example of something like the government passed a legislation that there should be more participation of women in the higher management positions within a company. Now, this is a direct implication of something called a political and a legal ramification on the HR manager. That means the government is trying to promote more and more women to be part of top management or boards within company,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is an external issue. That means it is not something which the company has decided, but it has been kind of imposed or sanctioned in terms of law by the government. So that is why it becomes an external issue. Sometimes some of the external issues could be cultural. That means if you have different type of workers applying for job roles and you end up selecting somebody who's from a different geography, then some of these issues can be cultural. That means I am from, say, a particular type of background. I'm a believer of a particular religion. Then the HR department has to be compliant with that. If you have a national holiday, say for example Christmas and Easter, at times there will be employees within the organization which will want a holiday on, say for example, Eid or any other Hindu festival, for example. So those issues then become cultural. Sometimes some of these issues are led, which are from external factors like competition. Now, the company decides the compensation that for a manager, this is the compensation, for general manager, this is the compensation. But sometimes there is competition from other providers, like if you have Facebook, you have Twitter, and you have LinkedIn. Now, similar employees or employees in similar organizations might basically, have different salary structures. So the HR might be getting some competition to kind of comply with, the same salary regulations as with other companies. Now, so similarly, some of these issues can also come across because of external competition or, by customers, by technology, by, it could be economic, it could be globalization and diversity. Can you think of why it could be an issue if it's technology?
Technology can be like, the now we go to technology in, can say, if it's just like say outside, like it's external, with this external contemporary, right?
Yes,
Yeah. So there's many different technologies nowadays. It's modern days. Like now, let's say we're talking over the like internet, like taking class like this. So in HR, there's many like different technology. It can be used by external companies. It can affect like HR as well.
that's fine. So basically, you're on the right path. But technology-wise, what we are looking at is, for example, a clear example here, I would say is you're okay. What you've said is correct. Now, technology becomes a barrier. Now, if that would mean that, say, for example, if the company uses Windows 7 in all its PCs
Yeah.
and machines, and suddenly the IT department tries to introduce Windows 10. Now, what will happen is that in some cases, people who are comfortable with Windows 7 and using of Windows as a technology might not be comfortable moving to Windows 10. So then in that case, technology would become an issue because some of the employees would say that, okay, we are comfortable with Windows 7, why do we need to upgrade? Things like that. So what the HR department in that case will have to do is have to put in some sort of a training and development plan for it to phase out, or kind of bring in slowly some training and then start moving them in a structured fashion, department by department, to try and adopt the new technology. Do you understand? So what could become as an effect of that would be that some of the employees would say that my new machine has been, because of the upgrade of the new software, I am not able to function competitively well, or function as I was doing before, because it is taking time for me to be able to understanding, the use of new technology. So technology in that case becomes an issue, because it starts to slow you down, and that is why it is considered a contemporary issue. Some of the employees might be very eager to adopt the new technology and are technology savvy, but some of the employees, maybe the older age employees, or people who are not that IT savvy, might find technology as might find technology to be an issue to kind of adopt to Windows 10.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Now, some of the other reasons could be, say, economic, globalization and diversity. So economic and globalization could be that if the company is, plans to open a new office, say, in Africa, and it then comes out with a vacancy saying that, we would to deploy some of our staff from this operation here in the UK, and would give them an opportunity to travel to Kenya. Now, not all employees might be interested in traveling and relocating to Kenya. So globalization in that case for workforce and maybe creating opportunities then becomes an issue, wherein the HR managers have to look at carefully selecting some of the employees who are ambitious, who are willing to take the risk, and are looking at promotion, and are also looking at relocating, would be given the opportunity to move. And that could be an issue wherein it could be economic. That means they would want some more monetary, salary, or monetary benefits. And in some cases, they might be looking at growing or growth, and because of which they will be happy to relocate to a new geography. And that would help facilitate the HR manager's decision to maybe propose a employee to go to a new location rather than the others. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, some of these issues which come up or crop up, classified as contemporary issues, could be internal. So when you look at these internal issues, culture, for example, can be both internal and external, right? Sometimes you find that these employers try to maintain a balance in terms of diversity or the culture that they have in the office. So if for some reason, when you understand a large company like Facebook, when they take on a lot of programmers, they try and bring in programmers from different backgrounds. The idea is they want different demographics and creativity to come in. And in that case, sometimes getting together people from different backgrounds who speak different languages becomes an issue, because it becomes difficult to manage them because of their cultural diversity, right? Internally, it could size and structure could also be an issue, because if the department becomes too large, or if there is too few managers to manage the employees in a particular department, sometimes the size and structure starts creating an issue wherein you're not able to review the work properly, you're not able to review all the employees' work, and do appraisals at same point in time. And because of which, what tends to happen is, because the organization has become too large or the department has become too large, it becomes difficult for the person to be able to manage, the set of employees. So in that case, size and structure of the organization also to be sometimes a contemporary issue. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Now, one of the other key things that you would have heard is that when today organizations talk about, and when they look at recruiting new people within roles, they always talk about something called the quality of work life. They talk about work life balance. They talk about that you need to be able to have a quality lifestyle and also be able to work simultaneously within the office to be more effective and efficient, right?
Right.
So that particular thing is basically called the quality of life and productivity. And that at some point in time can also be, something called a contemporary issue. Now here, the HR manager and the organization has a responsibility to be able to develop a working condition that provides, that in general is very well providing the economic well-being of the organization and also taking care of the individual. Right? Now, example here would be when you look at IT in terms of technology. Now, sometimes what the organizations do is, if there are people which work in call centers, or if there are staff which work with heavily use of computers, what they try and do is they try and create some sort of facilities within the office like gyms and cafes, wherein the employees have the ability to be able to take breaks and also kind of do away with the use of heavy usage of technology. Have you seen that? So what I will do is I'll try and give you a bit of a video, for example, to understand how Google as an organization kind of creates the concept of work-life philosophy, so that they are able to kind of look at this particular balance. Because sometimes in organizations, when you look at programmers, Google for example have most of their employees as programmers. Now sometimes it is difficult for them to separate work from their personal life, and what the organization then tries to do is it tries to create things like facilities of gyms, recreation, cafes within the office, so that the individuals, while they're working within the office, are still able to enjoy a quality life, but also at the same point in time able to contribute productively or efficiently towards the work that they are doing. So this in some cases becomes a contemporary issue, and HR department then looks after this particular aspect, wherein they try and balance the work life with the output or the productivity they want from the employee. Does that make sense?
Sorry, I didn't get that. Just go through again.
Okay, let's look at certain organizations wherein you typically find that they they work quite a lot. They work long hours. One of the examples could be wherein if you look at Google, for example, as an organization, why do you think if you look at the Google campus on a YouTube video, what you will feel is that in the campus, what they've done is they've created facilities for the users to be able to use gyms, recreation, cafes and things like that. These are images of Google campus. So they, for example, there is a bed or a slouching area that you can sleep in and still do the work. The gym that they've created. You see?
Yeah.
There are outdoor, activities that they have done, which kind of, give the employees ample opportunities for them to be able to manage and, kind of balance their work life.
Right.
Now, this concept is prevalent in companies wherein, the work never stops. Or some of the example here would be that when you look at engineers, who work within Google, they do a lot of programming. So what the company then tries to do is they try to give them facilities or tools within the office environment, wherein the employee can actually come in and have a shower, can go to the gym, can go to the cafe, and absolutely look at other activities that they can do. And this is done because they want to be able to give the best to the employees and kind of remove a bit of kind of a line between work and their personal life. So sometimes when you're in office, you feel as if you're at home because you have access to most of the things. Like for example, you have access to a cafe, You want to go to gym if you're not like working and you're tired, you can go to a gym. You want to have a shower, you can go and have a shower. So some of these companies have created a balance which allows you to get the best out of your personal life and also the best out of your professional life while you're working within the office. And this is called the work-life balance. So HR managers have to be open to the aspect of, listening into employees, wherein sometimes they come and say that, I'm feeling quite exhausted or I'm feeling quite overworked and I'm quite bored with the kind of work that I do. Now, if you get these kind of questions coming in, then the HR manager's responsibility is to look at introspection. That means they need to start digging in to find out why the employee is feeling that way. Is the employee working too hard? Is the work at the employee end become quite monotonous or mundane? That means it's repetitive work and the employee actually wants to look at a slight bit of different work or, change in job profile. So these are issues which the HR, when they look at the quality of work life, that means the kind of work that the person does within the office, and what is the kind of productivity or efficiency a person is able to produce, and how much time does he spend within the office, and how much time does he spend with his family. Do you understand this?
Yeah.
So it is one of the responsibilities of the organization to be able to keep developing the job and the job role, and also provide working conditions that are excellent or more conducive for the persons to work within the organization. That means the employee does not feel like I should leave the company. They want to grow with the company. They want to take on more responsibility, and they have to look at obviously what you call obviously look at more work, but also be able to produce what you call let me put it this way. They are able to produce work which is in requirement with the organization's objectives, but at the same point in time enjoy the work that they do. Okay, so this particular issue is basically nothing but a contemporary issue wherein the HR managers have to balance this, and this falls under something called quality of work life and productivity. Okay. Well, one of the other issues that you also look at is human resource information system. Now, HR managers hold a lot of data, personal data for employees, right?
Yeah.
Now, personal data could be they hold, your personal details like your demographics, your name, date of birth, and your educational qualifications. They also hold information related to your wages and your salary. They also hold information related to your medical records. If you have any specific condition and things like that. So this bit of information has to be treated with confidentiality. And because of this, sometimes the HR implements in the organization that you will see in large organizations or large companies in particular, you will see that the HR also has something called the HR information system. And there are some advantages and some disadvantages of HR information system. So this system has restricted access. That means only very few people within the department will be able to access all this information. And this information that is basically, from time to time updated. This information is compiled and is then used, by the management to look at overall employee, progress, productivity, and also the growth within the organization. So in some cases, what you tend to see is, let's give you an example that there are employees, two employees which are in sales, and they are at a position called vice president sales. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if the organization is looking at promoting one of the persons to the position of president sales, they will need to rely on facts and figures to be able to take that decision. Isn't it?
Yeah.
So if that person has been with the company for 20 years, has consistently performed and overperformed in terms of achieving the targets, in general, the employees talk about him quite fairly well. He's respected, and the other peers or colleagues within the organization actually look up to him. All this data, where do you think will be captured?
In HR.
In HR. So correct. So year on year, the appraisals which are done, the management meetings which are done, and the person's records which are created are actually all stored within the some sort of a system. Now, in big companies, it could be information system. In some companies, it might be stored manually as as paper. But at the end of the day, this information is absolutely vital for you to be able to take as a director or maybe as a CEO of the organization to take that, because which employee you would be looking at promoting to the position of president. Because you might have two similar employees which have similar number of years of experience, maybe say 15 and 16 years of experience, have both done exceedingly well. But at some stage, when you want to take a decision to promote one, because there's only one vacancy, the senior management would only be able to take this decision if they take the decision on the basis of facts and figures. And these facts and figures come across from the HR information system. So assuming you and me are to be promoted, but instead of me getting promoted, you have got promoted. Now, if I feel that I have not been done justice, then I will go and challenge that decision. Now, when you challenge that decision, the only way HR or the HR manager will be able to show the difference why you were chosen over me is because he or she would have factual data. Correct? Now, in those cases, because it's very senior level decision, it can lead to a bit of conflict and bit of bad PR for the organization. All this has to be carefully considered and documented so that at some stage, if there is a challenge or if there was a challenge to arise, then this can be clearly shown that the decisions were taken on the basis of fact. And sometimes you get to see that these kind of situations arise, and that is why promotions are taken as one of the contemporary issues within the organization. Okay, clear?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Now, one of the other issues, very briefly going through, is outsourcing. There are lots of people who are losing their jobs in America, in Europe, and people are, companies are looking at saving money, and what they're looking at doing is they're outsourcing some of their jobs to countries abroad in Asia. Now, because of which, what tends to happen is that people feel that I've lost my job and I've lost this, and because of which this has happened. Give me 1 second, Abdul.
Okay, no problem.
UK Versity. Okay, thanks. So basically, outsourcing is then also kind of an contemporary issue, is because people are losing their jobs and HR managers have to do a bit of a very thin line balance. They have to walk very thin line, and they have to look at a bit of a balance so that they are able to kind of make these decisions in terms of why the employees were laid off or made redundant, and this decision of outsourcing was done. So outsourcing is one of the contemporary issues that we will look at in a bit more detail, and it basically means that you are trying to contract the jobs within a particular location to a vendor outside, and that service is going to be provided by somebody outside the company than within the company. An example here would be, for example, telecom companies like Vodafone, TalkTalk, and these companies. What they've done is they've outsourced their customer services center or customer contact center to companies in Asia. And that service is now available 24/7. So in the UK, when they were offering this service, their call centers were working between, customer services were working between 9 to 6 p.m. But if they outsource this, one, they save on costs. Second, they can offer the service 24/7. But this then leads to a lot of job losses within the company. And that is where HR then looks after this particular issue as a contemporary issue. How do you pick which people to lay off or make redundant? Those are things that you have to look at very, very cautiously. So outsourcing is one of the contemporary issues that way. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, there are some of the other issues like knowledge management. Now, when you look at knowledge management in particular, knowledge management basically means you have data which is converted into information, and that information is synthesized or analyzed or created into reports and tables, and is then presented to management as knowledge for decision making. So, say for example, when you look at let's take an example of a call center. Now, in the call center, the Sky call center, for example, makes say for example, um, say 2,000 calls.
Hello. Hello.
Hi, Abdul, are you
Yeah.
back?
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Okay. So knowledge management, what I was explaining is very briefly is what we were taking an example of, say for example, to work with the call center, lots of calls that the call center takes. Then if they make 2,000 calls and they also take 2,000 inbound calls, that for me is data. That means as a call center agent, I'm basically making 50 calls a day. Now that data can be processed, the call data can be processed into some sort of information for the call center manager. Now he would like to know, he would not want to be knowing that how many calls the agents are making, whether it's inbound, outbound, how many. So what he would want to do is he would want to kind of process that data into information, and that processing of information from data to information will be things like, okay, how many calls were for a particular type of problem? How many of these problems were resolved today? How many of these problems required technical help, for example? So what he would try to do is from the calls being made, he would try and get those data processed into the types of problems that the customers are facing. Now, this same information compiled will then be compiled tables, charts, and graphs, and that would then kind of create some sort of a summary that, okay, out of the 2,000 calls received, we had about, say, 579 calls received, which were sales calls. Then we had about 1,500 of the remaining calls, or 1,421 of the remaining calls were calls which were technical errors. So what he's trying to do is from the calls and the data, he's trying to create information, and from the information, he's trying to create something which is called knowledge, which will be then shared with the management, saying that, okay, on a day on day, week on week, monthly basis, we receive, say, 29% of the calls, which are calls primarily for sales. So that means in the call center, we might need to look at putting in some salespeople who will take the sales calls to be able to do sales. And then you would say, okay, 55% of calls are primarily for technical issues. That means we need more staff which are technically qualified and can offer support to solve these problems. And then you would say that 10 or 11% of the calls are calls which are relieved for different departments. Like it could be an accounting call, which is bill payment. It could be something which is to do with disconnecting, leaving the service, or something like referrals. You get that point?
Yeah.
So what the company is trying to do is basically at some stage get hold of this data, process this information, process the information into knowledge, and then look at using this knowledge to take. Are you there?
So
Yeah, are you there?
yeah. Got it.
So basically, they are trying to look at taking this into some sort of a decision, and this then helps them to be able to, basically make some sort of a decision. Now, these things are primarily done because what they want to be able to look at is they want to be able to streamline, make the operations of the call center more efficient. So, in general, knowledge management, when you look at, is also a contemporary issue because it helps the HR manager put the right resources in the right place to be able to get the best productivity or best results from that. So in the call center, which is the next cost for the company, they might try and put in some sales employees, some people who are technically qualified, and also choose to do some training and development for employees who can then better handle and offer tele support for the complaints being raised and the calls being received in the call center. Is that okay?
Right. Yeah.
So basically, knowledge management is nothing but a set of strategies and practices supporting technologies that help to improve the use and sharing of data, information, and knowledge in decision making. So over a point in time, the call center and the kind of complaints you receive, they end up making some sort of a knowledge database. So the agent, when they receive a call that, okay, I have a problem with my Skybox and it keeps disconnecting, what they can ask you to do is over the phone, ask you to do a series of steps. And those steps that the call center agent is running through is actually coming from something called a knowledge database, which is helping him give you directions to be able to resolve that complaint. Is that okay? But the deployment of that is only done because the HR manager has data which is compiled into information, is compiled into knowledge. So he knows that month after month, the call center is receiving these type of calls, and that would mean that these kind of employees or staff need to be recruited, which are able to competently offer the, facilities or the, problem-solving abilities required in the call center.
Mm-hmm.
One of the key other important contemporary issues that we look at is something called mergers and acquisition. So sometimes what tends to happen is when you look at two companies merging, now when two companies merge, they have a different culture, they have different workforce, they have different compensation benefits, different issues, and the way they have been run in terms of their ethos and vision. So what tends to then happen is when the companies merge, you have to create and adopt some of the best practices and drop some of the things which the company feels is not going to be relevant going forward. So what tends to happen is if you look at a board of, say for example, when EE merged with T-Mobile, and EE actually merged, T-Mobile and Orange actually merged to create EE. You remember this?
Right. Yeah.
So when they merged, what tended to happen is that the company had 20,000 employees, but in order to create efficiency and savings, they only wanted 10,000 employees. So 10,000 employees were made to, now when they were made redundant, this is a particular issue which the HR manager had to grapple with, because what they wanted to do is they wanted to retain the best employees which were most qualified for doing the jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So this then created a bit of a clash, and this is again an issue because HR manager Orange and the HR manager coming in from T-Mobile, they must have both had and said, okay, let's look at the merits of the CVs and merits of the employees to keep, rather than, okay, because I'm from Orange, I would like to keep most of the workforce from Orange. You do away with your workforce. So those kind of things are issues which are dealt with the HR managers, is because they have to look at actually facts and figures and look at the compensation and benefits, because they must, the combined company structure would have been given a goal that what you have to do is you have to look at making a cost saving of say £1 billion, and that can only happen if you look at compensation and benefits. So the HR managers would sit down from both companies and would decide, okay, we have this person maybe at 32,000 and this person at maybe 30,000, but they do both the same jobs. Both of them do the same jobs. They have the same benefits, but this employee gets a little less benefit, and we are looking at cost saving. So I think this is the person between the two that we have to keep. So that decision is taken on the basis of compensation and benefit. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is also a contemporary issue. Now I'm going to give you some handouts, so that you're able to read a bit more detail in some of these issues and why they are considered as contemporary issues. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, so what I'm going to do at this stage here is basically just kind of stop so that you can at some stage, get hold of this presentation from me and maybe go through the contemporary issues which impact the workforce within the organization. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you a bit of a presentation to look at, the one that I've just run through, and at the same point in time, give you a slight bit of handout that you can go through for understanding these concepts in a bit more detail. Okay, so what we've done today is basically just covered these 2 points, which is what is the impact, what are contemporary issues first, in HR, and how they challenge the working of the HR manager and the organization, and how they can be resolved. We have only covered partly, which is 2.1. Sorry, 1.1. And this is something that I will pick up with you in the next session.
Yeah.
Is that okay? And what I'm going to do is just after this call straight away, what I'm going to do is basically send you a quick email with the copy of this presentation that I've just run, and also a bit of a handout that you can read through to grasp in a bit more detail about these contemporary issues.
Okay.
Okay. If you have any doubts, then what I would suggest is you either send me an email, and what I will do is I will pick this up with you next time when we do the next session.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Any questions on today's session?
No, that's fine. So basically, yeah, no, that's fine. If you've got anything problem,
Just drop me an email, okay?
yeah.
What I'm going to do is the other, the meetings which are scheduled, you will probably have invites which will come through so that you can join these, we can have these tutorials through these web meetings on a specific date. So there are, I think, 2 or 3 which I've sent to you already so far.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, Abdul?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much for this,
No,
and I'll speak to you
thank
next time. Thank you.